The Detroit Pistons just got blown out by the Brooklyn Nets, but Cade Cunningham did make his appearance and his debut over this past weekend. We'll talk about both those things on today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. You can also find me over on YouTube at Locked On Pistons. We're on YouTube. We've been on there for about 2 weeks now. If you have not already, make sure you go check us out, support the podcast, subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. And you can also find me over at Detroit Bad Boys, writing articles about the Pistons every now and then. But yeah, thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We really appreciate it. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms, as well as, like I said, on YouTube. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the things that have happened over the last few days. So I know Cade made his debut on Saturday against the Orlando Magic, but I feel like that was a bit underwhelming of a debut. He only played 19 minutes, didn't do much in the debut. So there's not much to actually talk about with that. I don't feel like it was a legit debut because, again, he only played 19 minutes. He didn't do much. You guys know for the last few weeks I've been speculating that, they were just going to get him in for that second home game. And I kind of speculated a little bit that they were trying to sell basically his tickets, and they were going to basically trying to pounce on him doing having his debut, but he wasn't really ready to play, or they weren't really going to play him. And I think that kind of came out to be the case, whether it was for the tickets or not. Who knows? But he didn't really – his debut was underwhelming, not just because of his performance, but also because he just barely played. So there's other things I want to talk about first. We'll talk about Cade's debut later on in the podcast. I really don't think it's something that we can spend much talking about. But there's something that I feel like we really need to talk about, a difficult conversation that we need to have. And I mentioned it on Twitter. I said that we were going to have this conversation. And it's about the Pistons' apparent number one guy, Jerami Grant. So let's go ahead and just reveal where this is coming off of. So the Brooklyn Nets obviously just destroyed the Detroit Pistons 117-91 last night. Kevin Durant got ejected in that third quarter for throwing an elbow at Kelly Olynyk. At that point, it wasn't that big of a deficit for the Pistons. You thought once Kevin Durant got ejected from the game, maybe the Pistons could keep it close a little bit. Not single digits, but maybe just around 10 points, maybe 15 points around there. But they ended up going down by 30 points at one point. And the whole team didn't play well. But there's something that's been happening throughout the games this season. And if you guys listen to the podcast, and some of you guys know that I brought it up as a concern for how last season ended. And it's the play of Jerami Grant. So far this season, Jerami Grant is shooting 36% from the field, 26% from deep. And he just hasn't looked very comfortable. He's struggling mightily. And there's reason. We're going to talk about some of the reasons why I think it's a little bit more than just, early season struggles. First of all, the first reason why I say I think it's more than just early season struggles is because we saw him wear down a little bit towards the end of last season. Now, a lot of us didn't want to believe it. I also at first was one of those guys. They said, he's just getting used to people, the other teams focusing all their attention on him, because at the beginning of last season, even without, Blake Griffin wasn't Blake Griffin of old, but he still was Blake Griffin. He had his name, so teams have paid attention to him. They also had Derrick Rose on the team. So they had other guys on the team that took some attention away from Jerami Grant. So it wasn't like it was just him carrying the offense, being asked to do everything. I'm sorry for you guys that haven't watched on YouTube. There's something in my eye. I keep trying to get it out. I'm sorry for you guys over there. But anyways, yeah. So there was reason to believe, because of the second half of last season, that maybe this was a little bit too much for him. Now, fast forward to the beginning of this season, it's more of the same. And there's some habits that are beginning to form that, let me just give you guys an example. Tonight or last night against the Brooklyn Nets, Jerami Grant took a jumper with both his feet on the three-point line. Now, there is somebody in Pistons history, someone who played for the team in the past decade, who was famous for doing that over and over and over and over and over again. And you guys know who I'm talking about, and his name shall not be named. But I can't listen. I'd be sitting here lying to you guys if I was to sit here and say that I'm not starting to have a little memories of him lately watching Jerami Grant. Jeremy Grant's taking way too many mid-range shots. He's settling a lot for some long-range twos. It's just in a lot of his shots. Greg Kelser made a point tonight or last night's game that I thought was really smart of him. When Jeremy Grant gets rolling and he's at his best, it seems, is when he's moving. The offense is moving around, not when he's stationary, being asked to do ISO moves or go attack a good defender, or from giving the ball at the top of the key and just says, "Hey, here you go get us a bucket." And that's what he seems to have been trying to do so far this season. And it was starting to become something that we saw a lot of, like I said, in the second half of last season. So this is a trend that's been going on for not just the first 4 games. This is not me just panicking over the first 4 games. This is a trend that we've seen since, I would say, like late February last year, or like beginning of March. I know last season kind of is confusing because they started late. So I think basically around midway through the season. I think that's late February now or early March. But either way, yeah, this is a trend that we've been seeing happen for a minute now, and it's concerning. It really is, because you didn't think that at this point in the season, even if we're at 5 games in, that Saddiq Bey would be considered a better playmaker than Jeremy Grant. I know I wouldn't have, but at this point, we're saying that's the case. Jeremy tonight, or I keep saying tonight, last night, I said it on Twitter. You guys talked about many times that through the first 2 games against Chicago Bulls that he was sitting Killian Hayes to save him from himself from what he was having to go against Lonzo and Caruso. Last night, I tweeted out that Dwayne Casey needed to do the same thing with Jeremy Grant, because he was struggling bad and it was getting really tough to watch, and he needed to save Jeremy Grant. And literally like a minute after I said that, he got Jeremy Grant out. That's how bad Jeremy Grant looked last night. Now, it was the second end of a back-to-back, so I guess you could give him some kind of excuse for that. But still, on the season, he's shooting 36%. And, it's definitely, I think we're not there yet, but I do think, again, I'm trying not to be one of those guys that overreact over 5 games. But like I said, I feel like this is a trend that we've been seeing since midway through last season. And I feel like if this continues to go this way, I think there's going to have to be some real discussions about whether or not they should entertain some kind of trade offers for Jeremy Grant at the trade deadline. I think it's becoming more and more apparent through, again, the second half of last season going into this year with how bad the team's struggling. Cade's not going to save everything. We'll talk about Cade later in the podcast, but Cade is not going to save everything. He's not some Band-Aid that you're just going to put on all the Pistons' problems, like this big Band-Aid that covers everything. He's not going to do that. This team is struggling because they just don't have much of anything on it. They don't have much talent at all. And, Jeremy Grant, there were some people that believed last year that maybe he could be, he's deciding to take on this number 1 role. Maybe he could do it. Maybe he could be a number 2 on a legit team. I think the more evidence that comes in, I think where we're getting to with Jeremy Grant, and again, it's not just about these first 5 games. I'm going to keep saying that. It's not just about the first 5 games. It's about the second half of last season going over into these top first 5 games as well. Is that I think that I'm starting to develop enough intel to say that what we're seeing from Jeremy Grant, what we've learned about Jeremy Grant, is he's more of the player. He has more to him than the player he was in Denver and OKC. But he 100% probably does not have nowhere near what he thinks he has for Detroit, or wanted to show that he had in Detroit. So, maybe what's the best way to say this? So maybe before he came to Detroit, people say he could be the 4th best player on a championship team. I think maybe now, a year and a half later, maybe he's shown that he could maybe be a 3rd best player on a championship team, depending on who his first 2 guys are. Now, the first 2 guys have to be like top 5 players in the NBA. One of them has to at least be something like that. I think before, you're looking at him possibly having to be the 4th best player. I think he's shown a little bit more in that case. But, the whole little, he wants to be a number 1 or a number 2 guy, I think we've seen enough through a season and a half, or not season half. Let me not say season half. Nowhere near a season half, but a season and 5 games that, again, he's shown more than just the 4th option guy who just stands in the corner. He's shown more than that. He's more than that as a player. But he's not the level of player that, some people were starting to believe he could be last season. And the player that he spoke that he wanted to try to be for Detroit last season. And I think, again, this is not something that we're just seeing through 5 games. This is a trend that's starting to pick up more and more. And one of the biggest things, and we'll go to break after this, the biggest concern for me is that the more pressure that's been put on them and the more physical, especially because of the way NBA is officiating now this season, this is going to be a new normal now. You're not going to be just getting ticky-tack fouls. The more physical it's getting for Jeremy, the more he's pushing himself away from the basket. And that's what's concern. I think that's what has to be concerning the most for guys watching the games and analyzing the games, that you saw it again, like second half of last season and the first 5 games this year, is that the more physical it gets and the more he has to deal with, the farther you see him start pushing away from the basket. He starts taking more mid-range shots, and that's not good. It's not. So, I really like Jeremy Grant. I'm not saying that the Pistons need to trade him, but I am saying I think we're starting to gather enough intel through the second half of last season, the first 5 games this year, that he's not the guy to be number 1 or 2 on a team. He's shown more than the guy he was in Denver and in OKC, but not enough to warrant, like, maybe this is the best way to put it. He's warranted to be paid around where he's paid now. He is not warranted to get more than what he's being paid now. And I think that's what he's going to be looking for his next check. And that's why I think the Pistons maybe should start. Maybe the Pistons already have been thinking about this, but maybe I need to change my thinking into thinking, maybe he's not guaranteed a contract extension. Maybe they should entertain possibly trading him at the trade deadline or next year. But yeah, obviously we have the rest of the season to talk about that and entertain those conversations. Hopefully he gets things on track. He starts to play a little bit better. I don't think he's going to continue to shoot 36% from the field all year, obviously. But definitely some of the concerns that he's raised within the play, not just his shooting percentages, but within his play, I think has been concerning for a lot of Pistons fans and guys who watch the Pistons. So when we come back, we're going to talk about Cade Cunningham's debut over the past weekend. But before we get into any of that, let me tell you about some of our sponsors. First up, Indeed. You're the hiring expert for your company, and what you really need is help making your short list of quality candidates. You need a hiring partner who makes your life easier. You need Indeed. Indeed is a job site that makes hiring as easy as 1, 2, 3. Post, screen, and interview, all in Indeed. Indeed makes connecting with and hiring the right talent fast and easy. With tools like Indeed Instant Match, giving you quality candidates whose resume on Indeed fits your job description immediately, reduces hiring time by 27%. According to Talent Nest, Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined. Get started now with a free $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked. Again, go to Indeed.com/locked for a $75 credit. If you're hiring, you need Indeed. Then let me tell you about another one of our sponsors, DirecTV Stream. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for all the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and all of the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more about it at directtv.com. Yes, that's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. So let's go ahead and talk about Cade Cunningham a little bit. And honestly, let me just say real quick about the first segment about Jeremy Grant. Again, let me just say that I like Jeremy. I think Jeremy's a good player. Again, he's shown more than he did in Denver or in OKC. I'm just simply saying that I think we're starting to gather more intel to show that he's not the guy to be 1 or 2 on this team, possibly maybe even 3 on this team if they want to challenge for a title. And he's not as, I think midway through last season, people were saying, well, this guy's a lock to get a contract extension. And I think a lot of people were saying it's a lock in the offseason that he's going to get a contract extension for the Pistons. I think maybe some of us were thinking too hopeful, because if you look back towards, again, the second half of last season through the first 5 games this year, you're starting to see a little bit of a trend, and I think we're gathering enough intel to think maybe you should entertain trade offers for him at some point in the next year or so. But anyways, let's go ahead and just stop talking about that. We've talked about that long enough. Let's talk about Cade Cunningham. So Cade Cunningham made his debut on Saturday against the Orlando Magic. The Pistons won that game against the Orlando Magic, but Cade Cunningham did not have the best game to debut in the NBA. Definitely not for a number 1 overall pick. I'm sure he would have wanted to, start with a much better game. He only scored 2 points, shot 12% from the field. Definitely, he missed all 5 of his 3-point attempts. It was a struggle for him. He shot 1 of 8 from the field. It was a struggle for him getting things going as far as making buckets. However, I think you saw in like the first quarter and a little bit in the second quarter that, with him on the floor, ball movement was much better. The offense looked much better. He really should have had like 5 assists this game. But, the Pistons simply just can't hit shots. I sound like a broken record. The Pistons just can't hit shots. They just can't. They can't hit open shots, and it's a real struggle for them. And until they get that right, they're going to continue to struggle. But anyways, my point is simply having Cade on the court helped the team, and you saw what makes him, that player that people have talked about entering into the draft, the guy that just makes your teammates better. He just makes everyone on the team better and makes the team look much more smooth out there on offense, and he definitely did that. And also, I thought he looked pretty good on defense as well. He had that one play, obviously, when he scrambled for the loose ball that got retweeted across Twitter, and Detroit basketball, bad boys part 2, etc. that was going around everywhere. The clip, nice, funny, all that stuff. But yeah, I thought he looked good on defense. But I think this is really what fans want to talk about. Why didn't he play on the back-to-back against Brooklyn? Now, first, let me just say this. Let me make this very clear, because I tweeted out a joke, and I said that the Pistons are treating Cade Cunningham like he's a 30-year-old coming off an ACL injury and someone who's only ate hot and ready's for a week. But that was a joke. Let me just make that clear. It was a joke. Him sitting out the second half of the back-to-back after returning after a month is not a big deal. Even, just him sitting out a game is not that big of a deal to start the season. It's not going to matter. I think everyone understands. Maybe a few people don't think this way, but I think majority of Pistons fans know that in 2 to 3 years, him sitting out a game on October 31st, 2022 or 2021 is not going to make a big deal. It's not going to break his career. We're not going to be thinking about that in 3 seasons. Obviously not. However, I want to kind of defend fans, and I also want to talk about why they did it. First of all, ankle sprains and ankle injuries are not something you want to mess with, obviously. I've played basketball my whole life. Ankle injuries are the most common injury in basketball. You're going to twist your ankle almost, I wouldn't be surprised if guys really twist their ankle almost every time they play. Most of them just aren't that severe. You just keep walking on it. But you catch yourself twisting your ankle almost every time you play basketball. That's how common it is. But when you have a sprained ankle, and I think Pistons fans should be familiar with this from not so long ago, point guard Reggie Jackson, who dealt with his own ankle injuries. And then if you even want to go across the NBA, Stephen Curry, who's dealt with his ankle injuries. Sprained ankles can become a reoccurring injury if you don't treat them well or right when they first happen. So them wanting to make sure that they're 100% and that Cade Cunningham is 100% and making sure they got everything strengthened and everything 100% before he actually goes is 100% the right move to do. Because, again, sprained ankles can become something that reoccurs over and over and over again if you don't handle it right the first time. So, I have no issue with them wanting to keep it, make sure that he's 100%, make sure they do the most safest thing possible to make sure it doesn't become something that happens again in the future and something that continues to happen over and over again in the future. That's not my problem. I can't speak for all Pistons fans, but I think a lot of Pistons fans also understand that point. I'll defend you guys with this part, because this is the part that I feel like a lot of people are just tossing out the window and are just like pushing you guys to the side. And I get this part. I completely get this part. You guys feel like you guys have been lied to, and I completely understand that. You guys feel like you've been lied to because a month and a half ago, it was told that he probably was not going to miss the first preseason game. Now, again, I understand the ankle injury. Listen, I've broken my ankle twice. I have ankle injuries my whole life playing basketball, and my ankles are weak as ever. They're weak as hell. I understand the reoccurring ankle injuries, okay? Cade Cunningham, it was told that he would probably not miss the first game. Now, Frank Jackson and another player, I'm running a blank, one of the other players had an ankle injury as well. Oh, Saddiq Bey and Killian Hayes. They all had ankle injuries. Now, we were told they were all mild. All of them we were told were mild at the beginning. 3 of those guys came back, and it showed that it was just a mild ankle twisting of the ankle. Cade went from he was probably going to play the first preseason game to now he's missing preseason regular season openers, and now he's not playing regular season back-to-back. So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the YouTube comments or in the reviews down below or simply on Twitter at KukaHill. But I believe that your guys' biggest gripe, which is fair, I believe, your guys' biggest gripe is the fact that you guys haven't been told the truth. You guys don't feel like you guys have been told the truth about Cade Cunningham's injury. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys and say that you guys 100% have been told the truth. I can't sit here and say whether the Pistons have told you guys the truth. Because you guys are right. We were told that he was probably not going to miss the first preseason game. We were told for about a week and a half it was not that big of a deal. And, saying he's day-to-day 3 weeks ago and then 4 weeks go by and he's still day-to-day, he was never day-to-day. That's not the case. So I understand that you guys feel like it's been a lie. You guys haven't been told the actual seriousness of the injury. And I understand that's probably your guys' biggest gripe with it. So I just want to come on here and defend you guys a little bit because I've interacted with a lot of you guys. I've seen you guys complaining. So So I get that frustration. It definitely seems like that you guys weren't told the severe, not even you guys, everyone. I feel like everyone wasn't really told the severeness of the injury. Now, is it possible that it was worse than they initially thought? Yes, that is incredibly possible. That maybe it got worse. Maybe he re-aggravated it like a week later or something. They just never told us. Or, again, it could have simply been worse than they thought. But again, I feel like, and this is a part I feel like the Pistons could have done better. This is just me being honest. They could have done better with their communication about his injury, because simply saying he's day-to-day every single day for 4 weeks, that's not day-to-day. Day-to-day is like a week, maybe he'll be back. Saying he's day-to-day for 4 straight weeks, dude, you're obviously not day-to-day. Obviously, there's something else going on. Just give us an idea. Just communicate with your fans. Communicate with everybody so everyone knows understands what's going on. I don't see, again, the Pistons don't owe fans that. The Pistons don't owe anyone anything to tell anybody really anything, I guess. But, I mean, fair enough. But then don't get upset when fans are spazzing and saying, you lied to us and you're not telling us the full truth, because that's definitely – there's some of that going on here. I can't deny that. So, again, we don't know. It seems like that Cade Cunningham is going to play the next game. They're just holding him out of the back-to-back again. I agree with that. It's fine to do that. You want to make sure his ankle's fine. But I just wish that the Pistons were a little bit more – communicated a little bit better with the fan base and everybody, because I don't feel like we would have these problems if they did. I don't see what the big deal is with simply communicating a little bit better, because no matter how you want to slice it, no matter what anyone tries to tell you guys, the Pistons sucked at communicating this injury about Cade Cunningham. I don't care how anyone slices it. They don't owe anybody anything again, but they absolutely sucked at trying to communicate this injury. It was trash. It was awful. I can't lie to you guys. So it is what it is. Lastly, I just want to say again, day-to-day is not 4 weeks. You cannot sit here and tell everybody day-to-day for 4 straight weeks, and obviously it's not day-to-day. Just be honest. I think that's what fans wanted, just be communicative with everybody. So, it is what it is. I don't personally care. It's not that big of a deal. Me personally, I don't really care that much, because in 2 years and a year from now, heck, even 5 months from now, later in the season, we're not thinking about this beginning of the season. We're not going to care about the beginning of the season. But in the moment, I get your guys' frustration. You guys, Pistons, just communicate with everybody. Be honest. I get it. But when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this Brooklyn Nets game. Another thing that I wanted to point out about the team and one of its players that, is a little bit concerning. We'll talk about that when we come back. But first, let me tell you about one of our sponsors, your guys' favorite sponsor, Built Bar. The best tasting protein bar on the planet Earth comes with a variety of flavors, including 6 new flavors, and caramel brownie, cookies and cream, cherry barcia, lemon almond, carrot cake, and apple almond crisp. They also have a ton of other flavors, such as coconut, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, strawberry, orange, cookies and cream, and German chocolate. All flavors are covered in incredible tasting chocolate and are soft and easy on the teeth to chew. These bars are low in calorie and sugar, but high in protein and fiber. A flavor I suggest is the peanut butter flavor, packing 19 grams of protein, 180 calories, only 5 grams of sugar, and 5 grams net carbs. So go try a Built Bar. Go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar ever. But let's go ahead and wrap up the podcast reviewing a little bit more of this Brooklyn Nets game. So, one of the positives I think you can take away from this game, Killian Hayes draw 4 free throws this game. He was really aggressive out the gate, going straight to the rim. He was taking this extra dribble and actually going to the rim with finger rolls, not these floaters. And was drawing contact, drew 2 fouls on shooting attempts. That's progress. That is progress. Now, I know some of you guys may think, the bar's low. You can see it however you want, but it's progress nonetheless, and that's what you want to see. Like I told you guys a week ago in the first game, you want to make sure his first game is better than his second. His second game is better than his third is better than fourth, so on and so forth. And I think for the most part, he's done that. Each game, he's getting better and better and better and more comfortable and more aggressive in certain spots each game. I really do feel like he's doing that. So I feel like Killian Hayes is, aggressive to start the game is definitely a positive from last night's game against the Brooklyn Nets. I'm a little confused about how the coaching staff handled his aggressiveness. He was playing really well to start out the gate. I feel like he was subbed out pretty early. And then, he was really good on defense all night. He had 5 steals. I just feel like he wasn't especially in the first half, the Pistons' best offense in the first half easily was pick and roll with Killian Hayes, and it was working. It was their best offense. And they just completely went away from that for some reason. I don't get why, but they completely went away from that and just went back into isolation basketball. And I didn't get it. It didn't make sense. But, they were going to lose this game anyway, so the Brooklyn Nets, I'm not saying would have won the game, but those things just, kind of irk me. I don't really get it. Let me know if you guys feel the same way. Something else I want to point out about this Brooklyn Nets game. Isaiah Stewart hit a 3 tonight, his first one of the season. He only played 18 minutes tonight. I think we need to see more evidence, obviously. But again, I'm just going to keep reiterating what I've been saying. The team looks better with Kelly Olynyk on the floor. And, there was a play. Someone tweeted it out. Someone tweeted out the clip. I can't show the clip on YouTube. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not allowed to do that. But for you guys listening on the podcast, listening on a podcast app, I should say, there was a play when Killian Hayes, did a crossover to his left, was driving down the lane. I think it was against Bruce Brown. And he really couldn't, Bruce Brown played good defense, but Killian Hayes really couldn't go anywhere because Isaiah Stewart's man is just sitting in the paint. And Isaiah Stewart, wasn't spacing the floor out. He wasn't popping. And, at the last second he did pop and his guy still didn't go out to defend him. That's a legit concern about this offense right now. Again, I told you guys this throughout the all offseason, throughout the summer. I've maintained this. You guys know who've been listening all this time. I have the receipts that I said that Isaiah Stewart, the stretch big, needs to be calmed down. That the idea that he's just going to become a stretch big and needs to be calmed down. Last year, towards the end of the year, he did start shooting more of them, but his percentage sank because of it. So, I think everyone needed to calm down with their expectations of him heading into the season. No, I don't think no one really did. And now people are disappointed because he's not shooting threes and he's not making threes. And it's hurting the offense. I feel like a lot of people were okay with starting Stu because they were under the assumption, at least a lot of you guys told me, that Isaiah Stewart's going to start shooting threes. He's going to, he's going to make threes. It's going to be okay. The spacings are going to be fine. He's going to be one of those guys who can pop. And it just hasn't been the case through 5 games. You guys know that we've talked about before that there was times where he wasn't even popping. The game before the Brooklyn Nets, he wasn't even, there was open threes that he was catching and wasn't even shooting. And now this last game against the Brooklyn Nets, he finally made one. But even still, defenses still just weren't respecting him. And it got to a point with Greg Kelser, and if you guys watch Pistons broadcast, you guys know that Greg Kelser is an old-fashioned person. He doesn't really like big men shooting threes. That's not the type of thing. And he said multiple times before when Isaiah Stewart shoots threes that, I really like to see Stu get in the paint. He says those kind of things. But even Greg Kelser said during the broadcast last night that, it looks like the Isaiah Stewart's man really is not paying him any kind of respect in the paint. It's really making it hard to drive. So when Greg Kelser's pointing it out, I think it's becoming legit enough that we need to talk about it. At some point, Stu needs to start shooting more threes and needs to start making more threes. I want to see him take 2 to 3 per game. 2 to 3 per game. He has to keep the defense honest because it's really hurting the Pistons' half-court offense when he's on the floor. The team just looks better with Kelly Olynyk on the floor. I don't think the defensive difference between him and Olynyk is drastic enough in impact on the floor to where it makes sense to continue running with Stewart. If you're trying to put the best product on the floor, it doesn't make sense. Now, obviously, if it's about developing Isaiah Stewart, that makes complete sense as well. Obviously, you're just going to keep running with them. However, I think that Isaiah Stewart, if this continues to happen, I think it's going to become a problem for other people in the starting lineup that you're also trying to develop, like Saddiq Bey, Killian Hayes, and especially Cade Cunningham. If it becomes an issue for those guys as well, it may just be best to move Isaiah Stewart to the bench, I think, at some point this season. If this continues to be the case, it has to change. Or I really do think it has to change, or he's going to have to go to the bench if it was me. If it doesn't change, he has to. In order for that to work, he has to start shooting more of them. And again, him being benched is not a bad thing. It's not going to stop his development. Just, he can develop on the bench. He can develop coming off the bench at 20 to 25 minutes a game. Now, again, I just want to make sure this is clear. I know people are going to take this from me. I'm not advocating for Stu to be benched. What I'm advocating for is for him to shoot more threes because I want him to start. But in order for him to fit with the starting lineup, he has to shoot more threes. He has to at least show himself as a threat, or the big guys are going to continue to sit in the paint, and it's going to be really tough on everybody to drive to the rim. You've been seeing it in the half court a lot lately. It just is the case. So I want to make that clear. I'm not advocating for Beef Stew to be benched. I'm advocating for Beef Stew to shoot more threes so he can stay in the starting lineup. I want him to be in the starting lineup. He just needs to shoot more threes. But if he doesn't do that, then I really do think at some point you have to have a serious discussion about just bringing him off the bench. I really do think it's hurting the Pistons half-court offense a lot. And also, there's another thing that's hurting the Pistons half-court offense. They can't shoot. Their shooters are struggling. They can't hit shots. It's bad. Like tonight, Saddiq Bey, 104 from three-point land. Jeremy Grant, 1 of 5. Killian Hayes was 0 of 1. Josh Jackson's 2 of 5. He's 40%. He was, he had a good night. But Kelly Olynyk, 1 of 3. Frank Jackson, 0 of 4. Like, their shooters are just really struggling, and they just can't hit shots. It's really bad. Like, tonight, the Pistons shot 36% from deep. That's probably a season best. I didn't check, but I'm almost 100% sure, without even having to go look, that was career best. So that's obviously the biggest negative about the Pistons offense right now. But I definitely think Isaiah Stewart just refusing to take threes and refusing the popping is really hurting as well, and is one of the bigger issues too. So again, we're going to wrap the podcast up. I want to make it clear to you guys, I'm not advocating for Beef Stew to be benched. I'm advocating for Beef Stew to please shoot more threes so he can remain in the starting lineup. That's what I'm advocating for. But thank you guys for listening to today's podcast. I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. We are also available over on YouTube now. It's been a lot of fun. We're getting a lot of subscribers, a lot of support over there. If you haven't checked us out over there already, the visuals, it's really nice. It's been a lot of fun. Go support the podcast by subscribing over there. Even if you don't want to watch it on YouTube, just simply go support the podcast, if you will, and subscribe to the channel. It takes a few seconds. We'd really appreciate it. We'll check you guys back out on tomorrow's podcast. The Pistons play again on Tuesday, I believe, against the Milwaukee Bucks. We'll see you guys then. But yeah, that's all I've got for you guys today. I'll see you guys later. Peace out, everybody.